when it says 2 or 3 witnesses, that's coming from the mouth of 2 or 3 separate people. Let's get that. You know, it's great and wonderful that Paul wrote, you know, 2/3 of the New Testament and all that, but he's one witness. You know, it says in the mouth of 2 or 3. Well, you have to be very careful that you don't skip from this book Paul wrote and this book Paul wrote and say, see, I've got 2 witnesses. No, you have one.
All right, this is, I don't even hear anybody else talking about this, but somebody in the comments brought it up. So here we go. They're not supposedly allowed to be in the office of a teacher. And this is why. So, first of all, the purpose of Paul's letter, Paul left Titus in Crete to set in order, that's his words, to set in order the things that are lacking and appoint elders in every city. So things are out of order. Mm-hmm. So what's out of order? So we're going to skip through here verses 10 through 16. We're still in chapter 2. Paul's saying we've got idle talkers, deceivers, especially those of the circumcision, whose mouths must be stopped, who subvert whole households for dishonest gain. They're swindlers.
Yeah.
12 and 13. One of them, Paul says, a prophet of their own, said, Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons. And Paul says, and this testimony is true. They're prophets, and I agree with them. It's their prophets. Paul continues to talk to Titus about this in chapter. So that was in chapter 1, apparently, and now we're switching over, but man put the chapters, but it's the same letter. So he continues. So he's talking about all the crap going on in Crete. And he says, but as for you, Titus, speak the things which are proper for sound doctrine. He's saying, teach these people not to be all these things we just talked about.
Right.
He said that the older men be sober, reverent, temperate, sound in faith and love and in patience. The older women likewise, that they be reverent in behavior and not slanderers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they admonish the young women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, homemakers, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God may not be blasphemed. So, to me, this is just teaching you how to have good character and to walk out a Christian life. Mm-hmm. Okay? Yeah. We're not talking about who gets to do what in the church. No. We're just teaching you how to act like a Christian. Chaste, don't sleep around.
Yeah.
Love your husband. I mean, you'd think you would. But, I mean, I don't know. Maybe these people was married through their parents, picking. But this word, where it says teachers of good things, well, we made a whole doctrine out of it.
Right.
Okay, so and I like it. He was only talking to the older women. He said, tell the older women, the grandmas, teach your daughters, your granddaughters.
Be a good example.
Be a good example and teach them how to act right to please God.
It's almost like he's saying, because he says the older men, then he says the older women. It's like
the older generations acting like a fool.
You older generations have got to lead these young people in the ways of dignity and righteousness.
Right.
He's not saying, "Thus saith the law, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what you're to do, and all you're to do."
Right. Okay. So this word, teacher of good things. This word, it is a feminine noun. So, whoop-de-doo, we're talking about a woman, and it's a feminine noun for teacher. Because there is a masculine noun for teacher. And they're saying that this was used with the woman, and therefore a woman can never be the masculine noun.
Right.
Because the teacher in the fivefold ministry is a masculine noun, and he used a feminine noun.
It's because he
But
was
we're not even talking about the church. We're talking about how they act at home.
That's what you see. Not only that, he used the feminine noun because he's talking to the women. In this passage, in this line, it says older women.
And you know how we rightly divide the word? This feminine noun, it occurs one time in one verse in the Bible. Well, let's build a doctrine on it.
Yeah.
It's one time. You can't. How are you going to get your witnesses for that statement?
Right.
Because this word only shows up once, and we've already shown where women are teaching and preaching and doing all kind of stuff, being deaconess. They're doing all kind of stuff in the church. So, whatever.
If you look at verse 9, speaking of bishops, holding fast the faithful word as he has been taught, that word taught is a feminine noun, and translators added he to a feminine noun.
So
why?
If there's a rule that the feminine noun can only be used on women and the masculine noun can only be used on a man, they just used a feminine noun for taught on a man because they said he.
Right.
Or they added he.
Right.
So what's the rule?
Right.
That's what I think my point there is. I'm seeing men and women being described with male and female, the opposite nouns.
Right.
So you can't say, well, that says teacher in a feminine noun way, so she can only teach women because it describes her teaching women. But you just use bishop. He has been taught with a feminine noun. The word taught there is the feminine version.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying,
you can't have it both ways.
You can't have it both ways, exactly. If we're going to base everything on the gender of the noun, we have a problem because ecclesia, the called out ones, or the called forth ones, which ecclesia is where they get church, this word is a feminine noun. So only women can get saved?
Well, only women are in the church?
Yeah, well, only women are in the body of Christ?
Right. We know that's a lie.
I said, so the whole ecclesia is only women. I mean, I'm just saying, if you're going to say because that's a feminine version of the word teacher, then women can only teach women, then you're screwed up because you can't even be a part of the church.
Yeah, because ecclesia is a feminine noun. Right.
I don't know what the rule is because I see them flopping on them, but then somebody's going to try and tell me I can't teach anybody but a woman, and justifying it because saying it's a feminine noun.
Yeah, that's not an argument.
It's not an argument. Okay, so the fivefold ministry, apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers are all masculine nouns. But the gifts of the Spirit are made up of the feminine and neutered nouns. Men don't have any of the feminine noun gifts, so they can work in the fivefold ministry. So the prophet couldn't prophesy.
Yeah.
Because he don't have the gifts of prophecy. That's a
Yeah.
feminine noun.
Yeah.
Now, you know, you can
That
say in
doesn't
the
make
comments
any kind
that
of sense.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, you're right. But I don't think the guy who said that just because this word teacher here mean it's a feminine noun, teacher, now that means all I can teach are women.
Right.
I don't agree with that argument.
Right.
That's all I'm saying is you're seeing nouns, feminine, neutered, and masculine nouns being interchanged. So I don't see how that's even can be a rule.
Right.
And all I've got back here is all these gifts that are feminine. Word of wisdom, feminine. Not men can't have any wisdom. Word of knowledge, feminine. Faith, feminine. Gifts of healing are feminine. Working of miracles, prophecy, discerning of spirits, kinds of tongues, and interpretation of tongues. All those are feminine nouns.
So you see how ridiculous it is to
For that
say,
argument is ridiculous to me.
It's ridiculous to say just because a noun is feminine, only a feminine person can function in it, and when a noun is masculine, only a male can function in it. That's utterly ridiculous. I'm like her. I don't know the rules of the Greek and Hebrew languages, but it's quite obvious that they're interchangeable.
Yes.
Because the office of a prophet's going to prophesy.
And you've got Deborah working in the office of a prophet, prophesying to men.
Right.
So you can't say a woman can't be in the office of a prophet.
Right.
So you got Deborah and Hula and all the others. They're in the prophet's office.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and that is a male. That's a masculine noun. Yeah, that's a masculine noun. You can't. I'm happy for you that those are all masculine and it makes you feel better, but I just don't see the purpose in it.
No, you're getting in confusion because I can't stress it enough that God is not an author of confusion, and when you start boiling the things down to, only males can function with masculine nouns, and then you get in there and all the gifts of the Spirit are feminine and neutered. It's just a ridiculous thing. You can't. They're obviously interchangeable.
Yep. And spirit is a neutered noun.
Well, that's good. That means everyone has it.
Yes. It's neutral.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think it's masculine because there are those who prophesy that are not necessarily a prophet. Or they don't, you have many teachers. People, teach their children. You are a teacher when you're a mother, but that doesn't necessarily mean she'd work in the office of a teacher. But right. I'm saying maybe she can. It really depends on what God, as the Spirit, wills.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Spirit is neutral, but I think they've made them masculine over here because those are offices and not just gifts.
Right.
But we are already seeing examples of women working in the offices. So how can you say that's a rule? That doesn't make any sense. First, I want to say, we were talking about rightly dividing and having more than one witness. 1 Corinthians, all the arguments that we're talking about is because of 1 Corinthians, 1 Timothy, and Titus. And all three of those are books written by Paul. Those are letters from Paul. That's one witness writing to the churches.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and this particular passage, 1 Corinthians 14:34, let your women keep silent in the church, for they are not permitted to speak, but they are to be submissive, as the law also says. So, later on we'll get into that. There is no law. So, nobody knows why that's being said, but I have a feeling, and I'll tell you in a minute. This passage is missing. Some believe it was notes from a scribe that got moved over. So you have, and I'm gonna butcher these words, but these are references of manuscripts and that are old, and let's see, plates of the Chester Beatty Papyri, and on page 46 you have this passage. All of that passage in 1 Corinthians is on there, but it's torn off on the corner, and there is no verse 34 and 35. It's not there. And this is a picture of the original manuscript. You're looking at it, and you can see where it's torn and worn and it's missing. Okay? Then you have other manuscripts, and I'll put these on the screen, but this one's from 4th century. The other one was from 2nd century. The Vaticanus, the Sahedric Coptic, whatever. These all, even where it's wrote in, they've got brackets and saying, brackets there, like, these don't, like, these parts are missing. It'll just say 34, 35, and it'll just be a bracket. Like, there's nothing, they're saying it's missing, or there's something wrong with this passage. They didn't even write it in. Or there'll be these markings. So there's brackets and markings showing you there's an issue with this part. But these are the earlier versions. When you go back, and I think the oldest one is this Chester Beatty Papyri, where you're looking at it, it's missing. It's not there. And so we're going to talk about them anyway as if they're there. But there is plenty of evidence and witnesses of people saying, I don't know that this ever existed.
Right.
So why would Paul use the statement, as the law also says? Why would he say that in 1 Corinthians 14:34? When Paul states in other epistles, we are no longer under the law, but under grace. Besides, there isn't one law in the 613 Mosaic laws or the 10 Commandments against women speaking. There is no law anywhere that talks about women not speaking. And you look in the Old Testament and you see women speaking. So why would Paul say that? People question that he even wrote that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it was there, why would he be talking about the law when he says we're not under law anymore?
And Paul says he knows the law better than anyone knows the law. Exactly.
And he says that in these two, there's several here. Romans 6:14, Romans 7:6, Galatians 2:16, and Galatians 3:11. He's talking about how we are no longer under law, but grace. So there's so many arguments about that passage, but we're going to come back and go further, and we're going to pretend they're there, and we're not just going to cop out and say that's it, even though I don't even think they existed, because it's not. That's one reason. That's how they know if something
they existed. They don't exist.
Right. Well, but what I'm saying is, it's even proof that somebody else wrote it, because Paul's not going to talk to you about law.
Right. And law that's not law.
Right. Yeah, that law doesn't exist, and Paul wouldn't talk about law even if it did.
Right.
So,
and Paul prides himself on knowing the law. So it's not even like, well, he didn't know. No, he knew the law.
Right. Yeah, he was well versed in the law.
Yeah.
I mean, he was slaughtering Christians before he got saved.
Based on the law.
Right. All right. We will see you next time.